Jin BTS tears up the Prudential Center with heart-wrenching final speech. What did he reveal on stage in Newark? In an emotionally overwhelming moment that left thousands in stunned silence, Jin of BTS delivered a farewell unlike any other. His voice cracking, eyes brimming with tears, and every word punctuated by raw sincerity. This wasn't just another concert. This was a closing statement, a confession, and a promise, all wrapped into one. As the lights dimmed on the second night of Run Seokjin at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, the venue transformed from a concert hall into a sanctuary of memory, love, and vulnerability. But what exactly did Jin say that shattered the hearts of ARMY around the world? I watched while performing. "Thank you, ARMY, for the heart you made for me," Jin said, his voice trembling as thousands of light sticks flickered like stars in silent unity. The second night in Newark wasn't just the end of a show. It was the final stop of his US solo tour, marking the conclusion of what Jin called a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Standing alone on a stage that had once been shared with his 6 bandmates, Jin laid bare his deepest gratitude and longing. "Because of you, I exist. Because of you, I can sing," he said. It wasn't just a thank you. It was a declaration of dependence, of meaning, of identity. And in that moment, Jin wasn't simply a superstar. He was a man speaking directly to those who gave him strength when he had none left. After performing in Korea and Japan, the United States tour stood as a pivotal arc in Jin's return to the stage. It wasn't just a series of shows. It was a reintroduction of a man who had faced 2 years away from the spotlight, endured personal transitions, and now stood under the glare of expectations from millions. Yet on this final night, all facades fell. "I promise to work even harder in the future," he said. "Though the Run Seokjin tour in the US has ended, I hope that when we meet again, I will return with BTS on another US tour." The sentence was short, but the implications were profound. A reunion? A comeback? A promise not just from Jin, but potentially from the group that defined a generation? The air inside Prudential Center grew thick with hope and tears. This wasn't a farewell. It was a bridge to what comes next. Jin's message took a deeper, more intimate tone as he addressed the city itself. "This is the last city of my US tour, and my tour is coming to an end," he confessed. But even in the face of finality, he envisioned beginnings. "I'm happy imagining that I'll work hard on music with the members and come back to you again together," he said. He made no attempt to hide his longing, not just for ARMY, but for the brotherhood he shares with BTS. "I'm doing my best where I am now, and I'm sure they're doing their best where they are now too," Jin stated with quiet confidence. It was a subtle but powerful nod to the other 6, RM, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook, who were not physically on stage, but unmistakably present in spirit. The line that followed struck like thunder. "We performed here before. Did anyone come back from that time?" he asked, eliciting a roar of recognition from the crowd. The mention of past BTS performances in Newark evoked not just nostalgia, but a painful awareness of the passage of time. Years had passed. Lives had changed. Yet the love endured. "It feels like a long time ago, but thank you so much for not forgetting us and for still loving us," Jin continued, his voice increasingly heavy with emotion. He acknowledged the reality that BTS couldn't always be beside their fans, but offered a vow that left the audience breathless. "We will work even harder to make sure that when we return, it will be a truly happy moment in your life." With that sentence, Jin didn't just promise music or appearances, he promised emotional impact. He promised significance. And in that promise lay the very foundation of BTS's global phenomenon, a connection so intense, so reciprocal, that it transcends language, distance, and even absence. As tears streamed down his face, Jin ended with what could only be described as a love letter to the city that had welcomed him. "Thank you. I love Newark," he said, pausing for a moment before looking out one last time. The words, "Thank you, Jin," "We love you, Jin," and "We are proud of you, Jin," lit up the screens, echoing the silent chants that ARMY carried in their hearts. The emotional climax wasn't choreographed. It wasn't polished. It was real. The sincerity in Jin's final bow stood in sharp contrast to the usual glamour of K-pop performances. There were no fireworks. There was no final confetti. Just a man, his mic, and the weight of thousands of hearts colliding in a single space and moment. This speech, delivered at the very edge of Jin's solo journey, will be remembered not for its theatricality, but for its humanity. It was a mirror, reflecting the mutual dependency between idol and fan, between the dreamer and the believers who made that dream possible. As ARMY now revisits the recordings, photos, and fleeting moments of that final show, one question dominates all others. What's next? Will BTS really return as a complete group to the United States? Will Jin's emotional plea catalyze a new chapter in BTS history? The run Seokjin tour may have ended, but something far bigger was set in motion. Jin's heartfelt pledge to return with his brothers hinted at plans already taking shape behind the scenes. But until that future unfolds, the final memory of Newark remains seared in the hearts of every fan. Jin, tearful but radiant, promising to work harder, to reunite, and to make happiness the core of every return. And as the crowd dispersed that night, many weren't crying because it was over. They were crying because, somewhere in Jin's words, they heard the beginning of something even greater. As the echoes of Jin's final words faded into the rafters of the Prudential Center, a silence lingered, a silence filled with emotion, with questions, with hope. The gravity of what had just occurred was not lost on anyone. This was not simply a concert's end. It was a pivotal closing to a solo chapter that had stretched across continents, hearts, and timelines. And now, at the edge of that emotional cliff, fans are left to piece together the deeper meanings buried in Jin's parting remarks. When Jin uttered, "Though the Run Seokjin tour in the US has ended, I hope that when we meet again, I will return with BTS on another US tour." He wasn't simply speculating. He was planting a seed, one that will grow in the minds of millions of fans and be watched carefully by the global music industry. Was this a subtle announcement of BTS's eventual full reunion? Was this an emotional strategy to reassure ARMYs who have waited patiently, painfully, during the members' time apart? Nothing about Jin's final speech felt rehearsed. His voice cracked not for effect, but from a place of sheer exhaustion and deep gratitude. His hand wiped tears not as performance, but as a physical response to the overwhelming energy surging from the crowd. This wasn't acting, it was remembering. Remembering the journey, the struggle, and the quiet moments of doubt that must have haunted him between stages, behind hotel doors, and during the solitary process of preparing this tour alone. "I watched while performing." This simple sentence reveals more than it may appear. Jin wasn't just referring to the crowd. He was watching his own story unfold from the inside out. Every gesture, every note, every glance across the sea of ARMY bombs represented proof. He had survived the long absence, and now he had returned, not as a shadow of the group, but as a complete artist in his own right. This leads to another critical moment in his speech, one that, if analyzed, suggests that the future of BTS may already be in motion. When Jin said, "I'm happy imagining that I'll work hard on music with the members and come back to you again," he spoke not in vague or abstract terms. He spoke in certainty. The word will stood firm and unshaken. That's not a hope. That's a roadmap. It's important to note how Jin framed the experience. Newark was not just another US city on the itinerary. It was the final US city, the finale, the place where everything culminated. And he made sure to say so. "This is the last city of my US tour." That clarity, that finality, only amplifies the emotional weight of the performance. The entire concert was structured like a goodbye, but the kind of goodbye that comes with a silent pact to return stronger, better, and together. He then asked the audience a question that pierced the atmosphere with nostalgia. "We performed here before. Did anyone come back from that time?" In doing so, he not only honored longtime fans, but reminded everyone that BTS has history in the city, that their roots are deep, that their return is not a novelty, it's a homecoming. What makes Jin's solo journey even more impactful is the silent parallel running alongside it, the absence of his 6 bandmates. Each of them, Whether fulfilling military service, pursuing solo careers, or temporarily stepping away from the spotlight, has remained physically distant but emotionally tethered to the group. And when Jin said, "I'm doing my best where I am now, and I'm sure they're doing their best where they are now too," he bridged that gap. He reassured fans that even in their separation, the members are united in effort, in heart, and in purpose. Those few words, unadorned and vulnerable, drew tears not just from Jin, but from fans around the world watching through live streams, fan cams, and live tweets. It wasn't just about his performance anymore. It became about endurance, about legacy, and about what it means to continue loving something that often feels just out of reach. Even a mention of the long-past BTS concert in Newark served as a strategic reminder that time may have moved forward, but the bond has not weakened. In fact, it has only grown more resilient. "It feels like a long time ago, but thank you so much for not forgetting us and for still loving us," Jin said. This wasn't sentimentality. It was recognition of loyalty, a direct acknowledgement of a fandom that has withstood years of change, hiatuses, and transitions. Jin's message was simple: you stayed. And because you stayed, so will we. As the stage lights began to dim and the cheers began to quiet, Jin offered his final parting words. No dramatic send-off. No scripted flairists. Just one sentence. Thank you. I love Newark. It may have sounded small, but in the context of everything that came before, it was monumental. And then, as if summoned by the force of his voice alone, the screens inside the Prudential Center lit up with words that silenced even the loudest cheers. Thank you, Jin. We love you, Jin. We are proud of you, Jin. It wasn't just a display. It was a chorus, a visual symphony of affection and affirmation. There's an undeniable weight to moments like these, where artist and audience meet not as idol and admirer, but as equals. Both having endured, both having waited, and both, in their own way, saying goodbye while whispering, "Not for long." The question now looms heavier than ever. When will we see BTS again, together, on stage, under the same lights? Jin's speech didn't answer that. But it did something even more powerful. It made us believe that we willed in a world that has grown increasingly uncertain, where the music industry shifts overnight and personal lives intersect with public expectations. Jin's honesty provided a rare kind of stability. His pain was visible, but so was his hope. And in that vulnerability, a new chapter quietly began. As fans across the globe replay the Newark performance, dissect every sentence, and analyze every tear, they aren't just mourning the end of a tour. They're preparing for the next sunrise. One that, if Jin's promise is fulfilled, will shine even brighter, with all 7 members standing side by side once again.